Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. On the program today, the head of the state bar and Planned Parenthood. We have issues. Ray Hagar has the rundown.
Thanks, Sam. Today's first guest is Vince Consul from the Nevada State Bar Association. We'll talk about an insanity trial that really ended up crazy. Our second guests, Roz Parry and Pat Elzy from Planned Parenthood. We want to ask them, does your pharmacist have the right to refuse to fill your prescription that your doctor's ordered?
And coming up on the Power Pundit panel today, Liz MacMenamin, Keith Lee, and Connie McMullen. It's all coming up next on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
Nevada Newsmakers, brought to you in part by the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, the world's largest industrial park, the resort at Red Hawk, and the Peppermill family of casinos.
High-tech companies demand perfect world amenities. They require clean, reliable power, state-of-the-art fiber optic communications, and clean water sources. In a perfect world, companies would have immediate access to rail and interstate freeways. There would be 4-lane expressways that shorten shipping times and provide convenient commute routes for valued employees. Well, the future is now, and it's here. Welcome to the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, the largest industrial park in the world, building economic prosperity for Nevadans.
When making your decision as where to play golf, consider the resort at Red Hawk. You know you have made the right choice the moment you arrive. The friendly staff welcomes you to our award-winning pro shop. You know you've made the right decision on the first tee. The Lakes course is in the best condition in years. You know you've made the right choice after you've played 18 holes. The resort at Red Hawk, the right choice.
Nevada Newsmakers is sponsored in part by the Nevada Beer Wholesalers Association.
As an employer, did you know you can be held liable for negligent hiring? A background screening by Employer Links can uncover criminal records, like alcohol and drug convictions. It can verify the applicant's education, driving records, and professional licenses. Employer Links can check civil records, registered sex offender records, and Social Security fraud. Hiring the right person shouldn't be a gamble. Call Employer Links. Employer Links, protecting your investment.
I tell you, John, this industry has really changed.
Tell me about it.
You seem to do pretty well last year. What's your secret?
No secrets. Although I'll tell you something. The smartest thing I did was sign up with Pro Group Management.
Really? Yeah, they do workers' comp, right?
Yeah, their services are great. And get this, they saved me 30%. I've heard they saved others 50%.
That works for me.
Pro Group Management. Finally, workers' comp that works for you.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad, a no-holds-barred political forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
And we welcome to Nevada Newsmakers Vince Consul, who's the president of the State Bar of Nevada. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Interesting story came out from our good friend John L. Smith of the Las Vegas Review-Journal. In 1995, the Nevada law changed the potential verdict of not guilty by reason of insanity to guilty but mentally ill. And then in 2003, the United States Supreme Court came out with a ruling that said the insane, deeply disturbed people with no idea of their actions could not be convicted of a crime of which they had no comprehension. This has resulted in a very bizarre situation where a killer, Michael Caine, may actually be freed. Would you explain the story?
Sam, the situation is that in our country, the common law has for hundreds of years established that a criminal defendant, a defendant cannot be convicted of a crime unless they had the mental capacity to form the intent. So you have the insanity defense. We don't punish people who don't have the mental capacity to commit a crime. In 1995, our legislature changed that and enacted a law that allowed a plea of guilty but insane. In 2001, the Nevada Supreme Court invalidated that law, recognizing the jurisprudence, that the long-standing tradition that we have of not convicting mentally insane people. And it's a very rare occurrence when you have a defendant that is successful in asserting a defense of insanity. What we have in the Kane case is an unusual set of circumstances, facts, where 3 doctors, one of whom was employed by the state, the prosecutor's office, the Clark County District Attorney's Office, found this defendant, Mr. Kane, to be insane. The jury found him not guilty by reason of insanity. Excuse me, he entered a plea of guilty by reason of insanity, and was found guilty, and was sent to the Lakes Crossing, which is the mental institution for Nevada for the criminally insane. He would stay there normally until found to be sane. The unusual facts are that the doctors at Lakes Crossing have now determined that Mr. Kane is sane. He's regained his insanity, or the insane state he was in has dissipated and gone away. So we have a situation where a person who was found not guilty was sent away because of being insane. Under the law, it will now be released pursuant to that law. So we have a situation where the law is being enforced, but it has a difficult to accept result.
Yeah. Well, how do you become sane? I mean, did they do drug therapy? Do we know the details of what led to his regaining sanity?
I don't know the specifics of that. I know that there was an indication of drug psychosis, of drug usage, as being part of the onset of his insanity.
Okay.
And I would assume that his drug usage ceased while he was at Lakes Crossing, and that he was able to regain his insanity. You have to realize, I mean, the case that most people would be familiar with would be the Hinckley case.
Right.
John Hinckley, who shot Ronald Reagan in 1981, was found not guilty by reason of insanity, was sentenced and sent to mental institution, and was there, is still there, but has regained his sanity to some degree, and is now on a release program. But there's a situation where the system worked. Mr. Hinckley's been in a criminal institution for the insane for some 25 years.
So it's the assumption then that now that Kane has gotten his sanity, he will not commit a crime again, and thus it's okay to release him back into society?
We don't know that someone will ever commit a crime again. The idea is that he's regained his sanity now, and from this point forward, if he were to commit a crime, he would be judged under a sane standard. What you really have is the doctors trying to identify a period of time in Mr. Kane's life when he was insane. And if during that period of time he committed a crime, then he cannot be punished for it. And that was the determination here, was that during this period of time, Mr. Kane was determined to be insane.
Do we have any idea of what kind of frequency this occurs in the United States?
It's very, very rare. In fact, in the Nevada Supreme Court case from 2001, our court talks about it being a very rare incident. I was looking at that case on the way up here today, and there's language from our Supreme Court in that case that says it's very rare, not only in Nevada but nationally. I don't have the statistics to give you, but it's extremely rare.
Let me change topics on you. The U.S. Supreme Court issuing decisions willy-nilly this week, and one of them was on the Ten Commandments, where in one case they're going to allow it to be shown, in another case they're not going to be allowed to be shown. What are your thoughts on that?
Our Supreme Court did what I think was an excellent balancing job of balancing the freedom of religion under the First Amendment with the clause that prohibits the mixing of religion with government, the Establishment Clause, so to speak. And the court said that it's difficult to have a bright line test in this area. You're not going to be able to say that under all circumstances or under all these circumstances you will not be allowed to display the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments have an historical, religious validity to them, separate from their religious training or their religious guidance, and the court tried to draw that distinction and said in some situations you're going to be allowed to display them in parks. In other words, as you get further away from a government institution, we're not going to have them in the courtroom, we're not going to have them in the lobby of the courthouse, but if you put them over in the park, that's okay. Or you put them on display with other historical documents, it's okay. But we don't want them too close to the government. So it was a balancing.
It's a balancing act, definitely.
Very interesting. We'd love to have you come back on the show again. We're out of time for this segment, but we look forward to having you back.
Thank you.
We'll be right back on Nevada Newsmakers after this time out.
For a videotape copy of any Nevada Newsmakers program, call 775-857-2244. The tapes are $20 each, including shipping.
My family started this business 27 years ago.
We work hard to serve our customers and our community.
But it's getting harder and harder to keep the doors open.
For example, our workers' comp is going through the roof. Isn't anyone on my side anymore?
The Retail Association of Nevada is. If you're a small business owner, we can cut your workers' comp by up to 50%, lobby for your interests, and keep you informed. Put us to work today.
Many of the materials we rely on every day come from the ground, and modern mining technology brings them to us cleaner and safer than ever before. To learn more about America's natural resources, visit nma.org, the National Mining Association.
And now, back to Nevada Newsmakers with Sam Shad.
And we're joined by, from Planned Parenthood, Pat Elzy, who's the Legislative Affairs Director, and Roz Parry, who's the Development Director. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Pat, first off, a provision that would have forced all Nevada pharmacists to fill all legal prescriptions, regardless of moral objections, was cut out of a bill late in the legislative session. This is the second session that the must-fill bill has been killed. Do you plan to bring it back in the next session?
Yes. This bill really was about allowing one medical professional to override legally the ability another medical professional's decision. And it was a bill that would have prohibited the pharmacist to refuse to fill a valid legal prescription unless it was contraindicated, fraudulent, or suspicious, or a generic option was available. It allowed plenty of outs for pharmacists who would refuse to fill. And it did not require a pharmacy to stock all legal prescriptions. There have been cases in Nevada where pharmacists have refused to fill birth control. And this is a little broader than that. We feel that pharmacists should have the duty to dispense valid legal prescriptions. And this bill did allow a concerned pharmacist to consult with the prescribing physician about a prescription, rather than intimidating or embarrassing a patient at the counter.
Okay. Did this happen in Las Vegas, or incidents?
We had one incident that happened in Las Vegas and one incident that happened in Carson City.
Okay.
It was interesting. Last Sunday in the New York Times, the ethicist wrote that pharmacists have an ethical obligation to fill all legal prescriptions and should not interpose their personal opinions between a doctor and a patient. So that's at least from an ethical perspective. Roz, with the resignation on the Supreme Court and potentially another one coming up, I happen to get emails from Planned Parenthood on a fairly regular basis. Those have increased in intensity in the last couple of weeks. What kind of action are we seeing from Planned Parenthood?
Well, actually, Planned Parenthood is waiting, and I'll defer that to Patty as well. We'll see who the nominees are for the Supreme Court, and then we'll make a decision as to where we go from there. But, of course, we do want to see someone who upholds the law. And that, of course, is the issue. But, Patty, I'll defer to you since you have done more research on that.
Well, the Supreme Court has consistently upheld the protection of women's life, health, and safety. And with the resignation of Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, her replacement may tip the balance of the Supreme Court.
But it wouldn't tip it all the way. Right now it's 6-3, correct?
Actually, it's 5-4. And basically, what we're concerned about is that we want someone that is on the Supreme Court that will continue to uphold the protections of health and safety of women, and that Sandra Day O'Connor has been respected and a moderate voice, and she has been at the heart of all decisions that protect women's health and safety.
I think it's been interesting that Alberto Gonzalez, who the President would like to see eventually be on the Supreme Court, has been attacked by conservatives for his views on abortion.
We're not going to take any stance on any nominated rumored nominees at this point in time.
You know, you're not allowed to come on the show and duck questions.
Well, until they testify.
Until we testify, and it's all rumors.
We don't know.
I'm merely jesting. I'm merely jesting.
You know, Senator Harry Reid has suggested that someone who, with no judicial background, perhaps a U.S. senator, be appointed to the Supreme Court. What are your feelings about that?
I can't really comment specifically on that. What we're hoping is that we have a fair-minded nominee, and that the President nominates and that the Senate confirms a nominee that will protect women's health and safety.
Do you think that, what about, Bush's track record? I mean, it looks like the 73 Roe v. Wade decision is in jeopardy here no matter what.
Definitely, there is some concern about the Roe v. Wade decision. There will be a court case that will be held, that will be heard in the 2005-2006 session that deals with access to abortion, and the outcome of that is critical in protecting women's health and safety.
One of the issues that Planned Parenthood is very much involved in nationally is to have emergency contraception available for women over the counter. Where does this stand?
Currently, emergency contraception is not available over the counter. But before we really get into that, I'd like to clarify some misconceptions about emergency contraception. Emergency contraception is just that. It prevents pregnancy, thus lessening the need for abortion. It works just as normal, ordinary birth control pills do. It is safe, effective, and meets all of the over-the-counter requirements.
The morning after pill.
This is formally called the morning after pill, which is a misnomer because you can take it more than the morning after. You can take it up to 5 days after unprotected intercourse, after a rape, or after a contraceptive failure. And if it was more accessible and available, research shows that 1.7 million unintended pregnancies could be prevented each year in the United States. 1.7 million unintended pregnancies, 700,000 of which now are terminated in abortions.
And the tragedy, Sam, is that this has been sitting on the FDA's desk, the director's desk, for 7 months. Their own committee of physicians who approved the FDA over-the-counter said, go ahead and approve it for women to get over-the-counter in the United States. This is the first time in the history of the FDA that a director has not taken the advice of the physicians committee for the FDA, and it has been sitting there for 7 months. He has not ruled.
We will welcome you back when a nominee is nominated and have more discussion then, because obviously then you will be able to comment.
I will.
We thank you for being here today. We'll be right back on Nevada Newsmakers after this.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
For more than a decade, the Southern Nevada Water Authority has been helping the community embrace conservation as a way of life. That includes replacing more than 50 million square feet of grass with water-smart landscaping. During the worst drought on record, watering restrictions and tough landscaping codes have reduced the community's water use by billions of gallons, even as thousands of new residents were moving into Nevada. That's smart water management, and that's our promise to Nevada.
When making your decision as where to play golf, consider the resort at Red Hawk. You know you have made the right choice the moment you arrive. The friendly staff welcomes you to our award-winning pro shop. You know you've made the right decision on the first tee. The Lakes course is in the best condition in years. You know you've made the right choice after you've played 18 holes. The resort at Red Hawk, the right choice.
And now, back to Nevada Newsmakers with Sam Shad.
And we're joined by our Power Pundit panel today, Liz MacMenamin, who's Director of Government Affairs for the Retail Association of Nevada, one of our proud sponsors, Keith Lee, attorney, who's not one of our sponsors, and Connie McMullen, publisher of Media Spectrum newspaper.
Yeah.
Welcome to all of you. I want to start out with a clip that was just astonishing to me this morning. It was shown on the Imus in the Morning program that also airs on MSNBC. Watch this exchange between David Gregory, the senior White House correspondent for NBC News, and Scott McClelland, press secretary for the president, and this is concerning the information we have now that Karl Rove was one of the sources for leaking the fact that Ambassador Joseph Wilson was married to a CIA operative. Take a look at this.
Did Karl Rove commit a crime?
Again, David, this is a question related to an investigation, and you have to have a response related to the investigation. And I don't think you should read anything into it other than we're going to continue not to comment on it while it's on.
Do you by your statement from the fall of 2003 when you were asked specifically about Carl and Elliot Abrams and Ruby, and you said, I've gone to each of those gentlemen, and they have told me they are not involved in this. Do you stand by that statement?
And if you will recall, I said that as part of helping investigators move forward on the investigation, we're not going to get into commenting on it. That was something I stated back near that time as well.
Scott, this is ridiculous. The notion that you're going to stand before us after having commented with that level of detail and tell people watching this that you've decided not to talk. You've got a public record out there. Do you stand by your remarks from that podium or not?
And again, David, I'm well aware, like you, of what was previously said, and I will be glad to talk about it at the appropriate time. The appropriate time is when the investigation...
When it's appropriate, when it's inappropriate.
If you'll let me finish.
No, you're not finishing. You're not saying anything. You stood at that podium and said that Karl Rove was not involved, and now we find out that he spoke about that Joseph Wilson's wife. So don't you owe the American public a fuller explanation? Was he involved or was he not? Because contrary to what you told the American people, he did indeed talk about his wife, didn't he?
There will be a time to talk about this, but now is not the time to talk about it.
I think people will accept that, what you're saying today.
Again, I've responded to the question. Go ahead, Terry.
Thanks again to Imus in the Morning and MSNBC for allowing us to use that clip. Keith, I'm glad that the press has finally found its backbone in this story. Judith Miller still sits in jail from the New York Times.
Well, yes. That's a different issue from what I think was portrayed here in this clip. And I would suggest that's much ado about nothing. The clip you just showed.
How can you possibly say that?
The first question that was proposed, that started this whole is, did Karl Rove commit a crime? Why is he asking the press secretary whether Karl Rove committed a crime or not? Karl Rove is not the judge and jury.
The press secretary
and he is not qualified to say whether a crime has been committed or not. He was perfectly legitimate within his bounds of legitimacy to say the matter's under investigation. I'm not going to comment on it. And I might just say, as a member of the American public to whom David Gregory referred, I don't care about an explanation of whether what he said in 2003 is still what he stands by. The facts have changed since then, and we have to let this investigation run its course. And again, it's much ado about nothing in my judgment.
I agree. What a badger. He just was badgering and badgering when
but
the
that's
gentleman
what the press is supposed to do.
On legitimate issues. On legitimate issues.
Right, exactly.
Apparently, Karl Rove, not specifically mentioning the name of Valerie Plame, but saying that it was Ambassador Joseph Wilson's wife, outed a CIA operative. That is illegal.
That's in fact what he said, and the facts are being developed now, and the matter is being investigated, and I have enough faith and confidence in the judicial system of this country that if a grand jury proceeding is brought or any other proceeding is brought to determine whether it's probable cause that Karl Rove committed a crime, then that will proceed in the ordinary course and we'll get there.
And so you think the press should just shut up and go away?
I think the press should concentrate on important issues in this country. I don't consider that an important issue in this country.
Well, I think it is a very important issue, Keith, but I was disappointed when the NBC interrogator started his questioning with, did Karl Rove commit a crime, because that's not up to the media to decide. But there is an issue here that is an embarrassment to the Bush administration, and you could see that their press secretary was sweating bullets up there. But the guy from NBC, he's a great grandstander, and I know that because I'm a grandstander myself, and I think he wanted to become the star of the clip and not so much the press secretary.
Maybe he was just incensed. This man put this woman in a very irresponsible statement, callously put somebody's life in jeopardy, and I don't care whether it happened 2 or 3 years ago. You just don't do that, especially when you represent the White House. Wow. And this press secretary, he vacillated, obviously trying to protect his job. Obviously, there has to be an investigation going on, but did he know or didn't he know? And if he didn't know, he should have said that. And if he did know, then he misrepresented this country. He led us down a path that wasn't true.
But you're assuming that Karl Rove you're assuming Karl Rove told him something other than what McMullen said he was told by Karl Rove in 2003. And we don't know that to a fact. That's why
And
we're
making
assuming
it
too many
such
things.
We're trying this case right on TV, absolutely, instead of letting it go before the investigative process that it needs to go through. I don't believe that we can sit back.
You're seeing newspapers all over this country and broadcast organizations who are scared to death of covering stories with confidential sources because they fear that they will be fined and their reporters will be imprisoned. As we
That's
mentioned
just
on the show
one newspaper.
As we mentioned yesterday, the Cleveland Plain Dealer has 2 stories that they will not put out because they are scared to death of being sued and having their reporters jailed. And this is not the only instance. This has been occurring in lower courts around the country.
Only one newspaper has come out and said they're not going to publish because of this.
But other judges have gone and prosecutors have gone after the newspapers and their sources, and I cannot give you the specific instances, but there are at least 2 that I know of.
But Sam, that's a different issue from this clip. That's an absolutely different issue of freedom of the press.
But it ties in.
How?
It ties in because you have a reporter from the New York Times who is in jail right now for a story she didn't write about this very case. And that is outrageous to me. We need a federal shield law for reporters in this country. And I'm proud to see the White House press corps finally going after this. And they finally got some raw meat to chew on, and they're doing it. And good for them.
I support
the White House press corps has been going after
we went to war under very dubious circumstances.
Let's assume we need a federal shield law. Okay, let's assume that. How does that clip there today get us to that point?
Oh, it doesn't. I'm just tying the 2 together just because we've found a situation where the press has finally got it back.
Well, the press wasn't sleeping about going to the war in Iraq. We were lied to by the U.S. the Bush administration.
That's a big part of this situation.
We asked a lot of questions.
We didn't ask enough. Liz, I wanted to give you a chance to respond to something that happened in the Planned Parenthood interview.
First of all, I guess to be right up front is I represent chain drugs and pharmacies within the state of Nevada. And Planned Parenthood represents that prescriptions aren't being filled. However, a pharmacist does have a duty, and part of their contract with the company that they're working for is to fill a prescription. They are filling those prescriptions. If they have a moral objection to filling a morning after pill or the emergency contraceptive, however you want to name it, then they will then either give the prescription back and refer the person to someone else. I resent it making it represent that a pharmacist is not doing their duty. However, we don't ask a doctor, or we don't tell a doctor they have to perform an abortion, but we're asking the same of a pharmacist. So,
all right, and that's where we got to leave it. Hot topic. We'll be right back on Nevada Newsmakers.
Nevada Newsmakers, brought to you in part by the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, the world's largest industrial park, the resort at Red Hawk, and the Peppermill family of casinos.
Here at the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, water resources come from fresh, clean groundwater, approved by state permits. The water is pumped from wells to million-gallon storage tanks and then distributed to TRI companies. Another amenity is our investment in a state-of-the-art wastewater treatment plant. This disposal system converts waste to clean water for industrial applications. Welcome to the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, the largest industrial park in the world, building economic prosperity for Nevada.
South Reno's hotspot for food, fun, and friends is the Tamarack Junction. Enjoy great food 24 hours a day in the Dining Car Restaurant. For a quick bite and the best sandwiches in town, it's the Whistle Stop Deli. And for the best appetizers and menu selections and a large variety of cocktails, beers, and martinis, it's Sully's Sports Bar, Grill, and Nightclub. The Tamarack Junction is your junction for fun. South Virginia and Amati Ranch Parkway.
Coming up tomorrow, we're going to deal with the Sempra power plant near Gerlach and a very innovative program from Big Brothers and Big Sisters. We'll see you then. Cool down.